it back?
Yep.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and start it.
Cool.
Kites are one thing nobody has to bring along. They come naturally at Bryce. Experienced naturalists of the National Park Service go with foot trail parties through the canyon on scheduled trips. Let's follow the pathway to adventure as our ranger shows the way. The National Park Service, towering formation, rising 200 feet above the canyon base, dwarf our little party as it threads carefully down the trail. All sorts of feet, little ones, old ones, and young ones follow the winding trails recently built to open new parts of the canyon to visitors. Walking, man's oldest form of locomotion, is a popular sport here. Against the blue of the western sky, a long series of pillars resembles a New York skyline, and so the rangers named this place Wall Street. The trail zigzags in and out among the cliffs. The sunlight marks the zigs and the shadows the zags. The guide cautions us not to zag when we should zig. Some of our party scorn the slow pedestrian gait and take advantage of the fine supply of horses in the park. There are 37 miles of bridle trails, and of course those on horseback can cover more ground than the ones who stick to walking. A magnificent vista of the canyon rewards the guests who persevere over some pretty rough going. Bryce Canyon boasts a battery of towers and minarets to rival a far eastern capital. The colors in these spires include many a shade and tint of red, yellow, blue, and delicate purple. For centuries, this lonely stone sentinel has kept watch. Nearby, Thor's hammer is held aloft. Every state in the Union...
All right, let's stop that now. You all can hear me, right?
Yep.
Oh, it's still running. Sorry. I got to turn it. I got to make it stop. There we go. Okay. I don't want that extraneous sound coming through the microphone. Welcome, everyone. We are live on Story Night. We like to, I have discovered this idea of opening with video. It seems to me that it's a nice way to let you know that something's happening without hearing us talk about how technically difficult this all is. On Zoom. As you can see, we are joined by Kim Weaver, Jose Priya, we have Priya Cherry, and we have Allison Loris. Ian Logan will be joining us, as will Doug Avery. Doug will be arriving later. I believe both are coming home from the day job, so we will welcome them when we get here. It has been, as of tomorrow, 1 year since we were able to meet in person. So if you are still here, I have lots of thanks and admiration for you. Thanks for supporting Story Night all this time and coming back. And thanks to all those who will participate tonight in our little fun venture. These videos can be seen later. I'm going to leave this up. I'm doing an experiment, or it's not an experiment, but we are posting this both on Facebook and YouTube. Over the last month, was able to figure out how to do that. We talked about it after I let you all go, the public, our adoring fans. When you left, we talked about it, and we talked about multi-streaming. And so I started looking it up, and it just so happened that a friend who has a popular podcast was on Twitter multi-streaming. And so I asked him about it, and I asked him about the program. And then Jose knew of another program, checked them both out. We're using something called Restream tonight. And in the future, given the news that we've been hearing about vaccinations and that, there is some hope that we will be in person again, perhaps soon. It may be that our first, I've said this before, it may be that our first event is outdoors, and we have a venue. We have somebody who's willing to open the place up. So that would work out well. And they have a sound system. What I'm hoping is that we can also broadcast it live when we do that. That's going to be a little bit more challenging than doing it here when we're all sitting in our kitchens and bedrooms and dining rooms. But I hope to be able to do that. These videos are available also on storynight.org, where you can find some other information. I do my best to update that as often as it occurs to me. Thank you again for joining us. What's that? Oh, we're okay. Okay. So some other work that I'm doing, and folks, if you're telling a story tonight, feel free to promote anything else you're doing. I write a newsletter. It's on Substack. If you go to fieldofsteve.substack.com, iwrote.org and my little cheat sheet, it's free, and there will be a new newsletter piece tomorrow, and I think it'll include some sort of announcement that's related. It's not directly related to Story Night, but it's the same kind of thing that I would like to do. And so it's not a promotional piece for the event necessarily, because I'm going to do what we do here. I'm going to tell a story, but surrounding that story is kind of an idea that I've had for a while. And tonight, what we are going to do is we're going to hear some traditional storytelling, but we also have a couple of questions based on the theme. Before we get to that, I would like to welcome Jose and Priya from Kitsap Regional Library. They've been our partners almost since the very beginning, and we wouldn't be where we are were it not for them. And so I want to thank them again for their partnership and turn the time over to the two of you to talk about some library programs.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Steve. Hello, everyone. It's good to speak to you all. I'm going to share my screen, Steve. Do you think I can do that?
Yeah, you should be able to.
Okay, perfect. All right, now you guys are seeing my screen. Hello, everyone. I want to just show some tips on the catalog because tonight's story is about take a hike. I was thinking about, hey, what about the library? Do we have books about what's around Washington, or which are the good trails to have? So I come up with a query that I want to show you all. It's named like Trails and Routes. And then by using that query, you have like specific books that can be related to trails and hikes. And Washington is super big on this. I am very happy that I am in this state because I like to hike a lot. So another one that after you search that one, you can add a word. You can add Washington, and then you will see that there will be another array of, or another selection of books that maybe are suitable for the area that we are living. And I would recommend any of these libraries that you can, any of these books that you can check out through the catalog. And then if you're thinking now the spring is coming, now is a good moment to explore those routes. And then you can complement your search with an internet query or a Google search, or any app that you would like to download to explore all the Pacific Northwest. So we have plenty of books here in our physical catalog. Remember that we are checking, you can check those out through curbside, and library will be open soon, our doors, but you can still use the curbside services in some maybe branches. So remember, Trails and Route at Washington, so you can enjoy all these books. They will be available for you. Remember to, if you need them for now, check out here. Remember also the branch where you like to order the books, and yeah, there's a lot of options here. So I would now pass the virtual mic to Priya. Thank you very much, everybody, for your attention.
Thanks, Jose. I'll add one more note on that, since you're showing how to search the catalog. If you're interested, if you found a hike that you want to take and you want to make sure that you're there, crossing all your T's and dotting all your I's, KRL does have a collection of Discover passes that you can use at trailheads. So just like Jose just showed in our catalog, you can search Discover Pass and it will show you at which branches those are available. It's called a Checkout Washington Kit. So that's just another cool thing we have that can hopefully encourage people to get outside more. I just wanted to add 2 more updates. As you all know, tax season is here. Time has absolutely flown. Wow. So we're going to try to start getting those done soon. We do have tax forms available at the branches. I believe they're the 1040s, as well as the instruction booklets. So you're welcome to come by through curbside and just ask for a tax form. If there's a specific form that you need, please do make note of that number, and then you can either come by via curbside and we'll print it for you. You can call ahead and we'll print it for you, or you can submit a curbside printing request. And we will print it for you. And as you know, printing is free up to 100 pages per day per person. It's a pretty sweet deal. So to find info on our tax offerings, that's krl.org/taxes, easy enough. And if you want to submit your prints to get them ready to pick up via curbside, that's krl.org/printing. We try to make it easy for you to remember. Last thing I wanted to share, one of our ongoing program offerings. Each month we have a program on the second Thursday of the month called the Anti-Racism Learning Circle. That's from 5 to 6 p.m. on the second Thursday. This month is going to be a really exciting offering because it is a truly all ages one with the theme of activism for all ages. So if you have little ones in your life, if you were a little one at one point and still just want to talk about this stuff, no matter what age you are, we would love to come have you join this discussion with us about what activism can look like at every stage of life, and just hear about what other people in your community are trying to do to support social and racial justice in our community. So that is next Thursday, 5 to 6 p.m. If you have any questions, you can check out our website or Facebook, or call any of your branches and just ask about the Anti-Racism Learning Circle, and we can get you connected. I think that's all I got for now, so I'll pass it back to Steve. Thanks.
Thank you, Jose and Priya. I will mention that, I think I need to spotlight myself or something. No, spotlight for everyone. There we go. Since I'm the one talking, I guess it just goes to me. One of the great things about being back on Facebook with this is that it's easier to see people's comments. And we do have some people chiming in. My mother-in-law is here saying yay. My wife is here saying hola. Robin Haber Carson says, I miss you all. And you probably all remember Robin. And she says, Priya does a great job with the Anti-Racism Learning Circle. So props to you, Priya. I have Cast on reserve. It's getting to me next week. I'm in the middle of reading a book called Heartland, which is about poverty in the Midwest. And I just got done reading The Splendid and the Vile, which is about the bombing in World War II, the bombing before the U.S. got into World War II in London, and how Churchill and people in London, how they fared under that. I mean, it was horrible and awful, but they kept this resolve that wasn't seen in other places. It was a really very interesting story. So, and all thanks to the library, I've been able to read these books. Yeah, so thank you. We are going to go right into stories, and I have asked Kim to lead us off tonight. So Kim, I'm going to put the spotlight on you. Make sure you're, let's see, replace add spotlight. Well, I'm sorry, Kim.
That's me in the corner. That's me in the spot. Light.
The timing was perfect. So I believe the stage is yours, Kim.
Right. Thank you so much. So my story tonight is about a photograph, and I'm going to show you the photograph at the end. And this is a picture that I took late in the summer of 2013. And although it might only be obvious to me, this is a picture of the exact moment when my soul or my spirit or whatever part of your body allows you to go from just being alive to actually living. This picture is the moment when that returned to my body after years of being absent. And I didn't even know that I had been walking around the world without my spirit, but I was. So at the beginning of that year, 2013, there was a lot in my life, but not a lot very good. I had had a really serious family crisis a couple of years before, and then I spent 2 years in Peace Corps, very eventful years. Eventful is one word for it. And since then, since I'd gotten back to the US, I had been teaching high school in inner city Philly. And all I did was work. I had 230 students on my roster every day, and I felt like I was working more than all of them combined. I had no social life at all. I wasn't eating well. I wasn't sleeping very much, and I wasn't exercising at all. And every time a kid in my class would sneeze, I would get sick. It was not good. I wasn't okay, but I didn't know how to fix it. But being a problem solver at heart, I considered street drugs, therapy, or exercise. And my research indicated that only 2 out of these 3 were legal. And it was much cheaper to join a gym than to go to therapy. So I was like, okay, decision made. So I joined a gym, and I'm not athletic. I'm very uncoordinated. I hate sports. And cardio is like poison to me. So I really knew it was going to be a challenge to stick with it. So I bribed myself. I decided, it was January when I joined, if I kept consistent working out, I promised myself that I would take the summer completely off, not take a summer job, not teach summer school, not do any of that, and go on a giant big hike. And to the surprise of myself and everyone who knew me, I stuck to it. I got a trainer. I was at the gym 3 or 4 times a week, and I was like, I'm totally doing this. So I started researching, and my first idea was to go to Machu Picchu. But for some reason that I still don't remember how this even got into my head, I started looking north to Canada and decided that I was going to go to Banff National Park, which I'd never even heard of before. So I don't know why I ended up there, but I did. And so that June, the day after school ended, I packed up my little purple car with all my camping stuff and drove 2,500 miles from Philadelphia to Banff National Park. And I had never been there. I didn't really have a plan, but I had a passport, a guidebook, and a credit card. And I was like, here I am, and I'm going to stay for, until school starts up again at the end of the summer. I didn't know what I was there looking for, but I knew that if I didn't do something different, I was not going to make it through another year of teaching. So there I was, and I would do the same thing every day. Get up, breakfast, hike all day, get back to camp, dinner, sleep. That was my routine every day. And so even though I had been working out quite a bit, I definitely did not arrive in Canada with the fitness level necessary to hike miles and miles every day at elevation up and down the Canadian Rockies. So it was pretty humbling. Like, truly very old people with knee braces would like smoke me on the trail and just leave me in the dust. Also, like, small children would just like go sprinting past me, like parents carrying children in backpacks. It was not good, but every day I felt like I was getting a little stronger. So about a week into the trip, I set an ambitious goal to hike this trail called Fairview Peak. And it's not a very long trail, but the elevation gain is pretty significant. But I was like, hey, I've been doing this for a week. I got this, right? But about a third of the way up the trail, it started to rain, like that super cold rain that comes on. And it was pretty miserable. The rain was so cold that I couldn't stop hiking or I'd get too cold, but the trail was so steep, I couldn't keep hiking because I couldn't breathe. And I was just really miserable. So not even halfway up the trail, I turned around and went back down. I was like, yeah, this isn't happening. I am not as tough as I thought I was. But that was the only rain that I saw on the whole trip. And so days of hiking turned into weeks of hiking. And I just was out on the trail every day. I didn't see or interact with people very much at all. Kind of reminds me of quarantine, but with less, they had better scenery there. And after months of being bombarded by the noises and the needs and the sneezes of those hundreds of students, it's kind of hard to explain like the unwinding that was going on inside me. It was just like I was able to fill the space of my body with myself rather than with all of this other demands that had been placed on my time. And I was breathing so much easier, and not just from the high altitude cardio. Like, everything was starting to feel like maybe I will be okay. Like, maybe I can get back to a point where I'm okay. So after about 7 or 8 weeks of hiking every day, and the summer was kind of winding to a close where I would have to decide, like, yeah, I'm going to go back to quote unquote real life now. I started to think about that Fairview Peak hike that had kicked my butt earlier. And I was like, can I do it now? Like, have I gotten strong enough? Can I do it? And it turns out I was. So I got up, went up the trail early in the morning. There was fog all around. I couldn't even see the peak when I was climbing. And up the trail I went. And yes, I know I was assisted by having nicer weather that day, but I know I would have made it up that trail either way. So I was climbing up and up and up, and like the last half mile or so of the trail is just like bouldery scree, and you're kind of like scrambling and sliding down a little bit. And I got up to the top, and there I was. And it does feel like you're on top of the world when you're up there. There was this huge rock pile rock cairn, and I was like, okay, well, this is it. And so I set my camera up, and it had like the 10-second little timer to get a picture of myself standing next to this rock cairn. And so I'm there, I'm standing next to the pile of rocks. I have my arms up in the air, and I see the light blinking down the 10-second counter. And I just suddenly realized, like, I was shooting for okay. Like, all I was hoping to get out of this trip was to come out of it okay. But like, I'm great. Like, I feel strong. I'm in this amazing place, and like, life is pretty fantastic. Um, I was like fully myself again for the first time in a very, very long time. And when I realized that, that's the moment that my camera went off. And so I have a picture of this moment. And when I look at it now, and I look at this picture fairly often, it's probably going to look totally ordinary to you, but I see that picture and I realize, like, that was the moment that set the stage for the life that I have now. Like, being just okay was not going to cut it for me anymore. After that moment, I was done getting by. And so from then on, like, I took less crap, but I also took more risks, and I set goals to have a more manageable job and to live near mountains. And I made both of those things happen. So now when I look inside, I do some people call them gut checks, to check on my soul, peek in there so every now and again. How we doing in there? Just seeing the mountains gives my soul a little bit of a jolt. It gives me a little bit of a reminder of what it felt like to stand on top of that peak. And if my soul gets knocked sideways, I don't have to drive 2,500 miles now to get up on the top of a mountain and look around and realize that life is indeed pretty fantastic. And that's my story.
I'm applauding. Other people are applauding too. You can't see it because I haven't taken the spotlight off of you yet. But thank you so much. That is a great shot. I will reveal that Kim showed us the picture before we started tonight, and I had a question: as who took the photo? I'm glad that part of your story was explaining how you got the shot, and that was a solo. That was a solo effort. And as much as I love that we gather to be around other people, and I think there is so much energy and so much to be gained by that. It is we need those moments where we do things on our own too. And I hope I'm saying her name right. Candia Mann. Do you know, anybody know? Anyway, thank you. I love the story and photo, she said. And Michelle Laboda up in North Kitsap. Wow, excellent story and photo. So thank you, Kim, and Kim is giving you a heart. I know the spotlight's on me right now. We need to do more of the gallery view, because you don't all need to just see me. So Kim, you want to do that heart shape again? There you go. That's for Michelle and Candia. And I apologize. You probably have to go through this all the time. So thank you, Kim. We have been joined by Doug Avery. So Doug, welcome to you here. Doug will have a story for us as well. I want to turn the time over. Jose, you said you have a story. So are you up for it, telling it right now?
Oh yes, it's a short story. So I like to hike, but when it comes to hiking in the United States, I am a super rookie and a beginner. So I remember that during the pandemic, I felt like I needed to like explore all around Washington. So I told my boyfriend, let's go for a ride and let's go to Leavenworth. So we went over there, and it was so crowded in the town, like hundreds of persons walking without mask, and like, I don't know, crazy. So we were like thinking about going up to a place that were a little more secluded. So we checked on the map, and we saw like a trail that says like Snow Lakes, and I was like, okay, let's go there. I didn't have an idea of what Snow Lakes is, but later I discovered it's like a 22-mile hike, and it's super big. So I went to the parking lot on the named Snow Lakes, and then I was telling my boyfriend, let's go and hike, and let's see. Maybe we cannot make it today, but maybe we can go over like a slope, and then we can take some pictures about how everything is seen from there. And we were like, okay, let's do it. So I don't know, like the inclination is like pretty steep, and we were not like sure. So usually the hikers like goes from um, point A, point B. So that's how it works. But I was coming from point B to point A, and then it's super steep. So we were like hiking like around 1 hour or two, and then suddenly people start like appearing from the trail. Hey guys, how much time is for the parking? How much time? And then we were walking, and the questions were repeated all along the way. um, Everybody was like rushing to go to the parking. So at the end, I noted there was a person that told me, "Hey guys, be careful. There's a bear like maybe half a mile from where you guys are. Do you guys brought your bear spray?" And I was like, "Yes, I brought. We brought our bear spray. We're ready for everything." So we like walked like half mile more, and then there was another person that told us, "Hey, be careful, there's like a bear like now half maybe like some meters from you." And we were like, "Oh my god, maybe this is so dangerous, like what are we going to do?" So suddenly, once we continued doing the trail, just around the corner next to a small cascade that there was, the bear was there. And suddenly when we stopped for like having like a water break, we turned our side, and there was like a bear over the stone. It was the most beautiful thing and scary at the same time that I saw in my life.
Yeah.
It wasn't the same trail, but we just waved the bear, and the bear like left. So we are alive and telling the story tonight. But after that moment, we thought like, okay, let's go back. It has been like 2 hours, and then maybe we can come back another day. So for next time, I will do the hike from point A to point B, and not from point A to point A. And we were, instead of like one can of bear spray, I'm going to have now like two, just in case, because it was a lot of casualty that on my first try, my first time trying that route, there was a bear. But I did not feel scary to try it again. But I was more impressed on how beautiful the bear was at that moment. It was like super brown, kind of like blinking. I don't know. It was great. So I just wanted to share that story with you all, and thank you very much.
Thank you. Let me change the view again. I'm having a little more trouble with this. Thank you, Jose. Anybody else seen a bear in the wild in a place that you probably didn't want to? Yeah, Kim, you want to? Do you have?
Yeah, I was hiking in Yosemite with two people, and I was in the front, and you're supposed to be noisy, right? You're supposed to like sing. So you've heard me sing. I was singing, and came around this corner in blackberry bushes, like both sides. And there was a bear sitting on its butt in the middle of the trail. And I stopped, and the two people behind me both ran into me like a cartoon, like a little. And I pulled out my camera and started taking pictures of this bear. And I turn around, and they're 50 yards back up the trail behind me. Like they retreated back up the trail, and they have the bear spray out. And I'm like, don't point that at me. Like I'm between you and the bear. But the bear was just like interested in fattening itself, and it paid us no mind. And so we just waited for like 20 minutes until it was done eating, and then it just shambled away. But yeah, it was pretty cool.
Yeah, they tell you that that's what they will do. They don't, that most of them will leave you alone, but it only takes one to decide not to. It's different. When I was 11 years old, I went on a family vacation, and part of the vacation was going to Yellowstone. And we did not see a single bear the whole day. I mean, we were there a long time that day. We were driving all over the place. Not one bear was spotted. And so my dad was joking, well, there are no bears here. And that was his reaction to it. And I was 11. So I kept falling prey to it and trying to correct him that no, there are bears. We just didn't see them. I was, let's see, I'm 59 now. So it must have been when I was 56. I was driving to Spokane, and on this side of the those aren't the Cascades, those, whatever those mountains are. So you feel free to turn your mic on and correct me what it is. Cause they are the Cascades. These are the Olympics. Nature guy here. So I was driving over the Cascades, and all of a sudden, I see this bear at the side of the road. I drive right past it, and apparently I surprised it because it did this dance, everything like that. And other cars were driving past it. First time in my life I had ever seen a bear in the wild. I was pretty excited about that. I probably texted Diana about it, and it's like, I just saw a bear, a real life bear. Here I am, 56 years old. I grew up in California. You don't see them out in the wild. Even you see them on the flag, but you don't see them out in the wild that often. 2 weeks later, I'm driving down the road from my house here in Port Orchard, between Port Orchard and the freeway, and another bear crosses the road behind me. So I had never seen a bear in the wild in my life, and within 2 weeks I saw two. That one kind of scares me because that's not far from home. And that was a year when people were posting pictures of bears climbing into other people's backyards. We kind of live we don't live on the edge of the woods in our particular house, but those woods are not too far from us. And there is a nice little trail, quarter-mile trail that connects one neighborhood to another, and then you go through a playground, and then there's a longer trail. So apparently they live around here, but and so I imagine I could see them on foot and have that same experience, and hope that they react to me the way they did to you. I don't know. I might look a little more delicious, so they might be a little hungrier too. All right. Well, thank you, Jose, for your story. And Allison, do you think is this a good time to call on you? You said you have a story. Turn your sound on, and I will put the spotlight on you. Let me ask you to unmute.
Yeah.
There you are. Let me throw the spotlight on you, and I think you're good to go.
Okay. Well, this would be maybe about 30 years ago. I had done a fair amount of hiking with other people, starting with people who knew about hiking when I first moved out here in 1970. So I knew all the equipment that you were supposed to have, and all the things you were supposed to do, but I had never hiked alone. And on this particular occasion, I also didn't have a car, and I didn't have a driver's license, which was one reason I wasn't hiking alone, because I needed somebody to take me there. Or I thought I did. Well, on this one occasion, I had been on a road trip with basically a bad boyfriend, and we quarreled in the dunes near Florence, Oregon, and decided that we did not want to go any further in each other's company. So he drove me to the bus station in Eugene and gave me back the money I'd given him for gas, and bought me a ticket to Portland on the Greyhound. So I got to Portland pretty early in the morning, because this had all happened like overnight. And I made my way to the apartment of a young friend. And I decided that I was going to take a hike. I wasn't going to go home. I was going to figure out some place where I could go to take a hike all by myself. So I looked up some buses. I could take a bus to Seaside, and I could hike over Tillamook Head, which to Ecola State Park. It was about 6 or 7 miles, not a big deal, but I didn't have a whole lot of equipment. I was wearing one of those really loose knit Mexican sweaters, and I put it through Susan's washer with hot water and through the dryer about 3 times and turned it into a very cozy, tight knit sweater. And I didn't have a tent. So I had a small backpack. I figured out some food that didn't need cooking, that was enough for a few days, and some water. And I was just gonna wrap myself up in all my clothes because I didn't have a sleeping bag either. But I thought I need some kind of shelter. So I bought a painter's drop cloth. This is a sheet of plastic that was about 8 feet wide and really, really long. And that was my equipment for my solo hike. So I took the bus out to Seaside, and I left the beach and set out walking. And it was, it was hard. I wasn't in real good shape, but I really enjoyed being able to go my own pace. My primary hiking partner in the past had been my ex-husband, who was 6'4" and always in a hurry. So I'd never been able to hike at my own pace. And I really did love that. Well, I got to a place in the woods where there was a clearing. There was a little tiny outhouse and a picnic table and nothing else. Okay, cool. I went on walking, and I got down to Ecola, which is a little tiny bay. And I had thought that I would be able to sleep on the beach there, but there was hardly any beach. There were these very soggy meadows full of flowering weeds that were almost like succulents. I was not going to be able to lay down on that marsh. The beach was going to be covered at high tide. Okay, well, I'm going to have to go back up into the woods. I went back to the little clearing with the picnic table and the outhouse. And I got really clever. There was beginning to be quite a chilly breeze, but I took that drop cloth. I laid one end of it under the picnic table, and then I brought it up over the bench and over the top of the table and down the bench on the other side and back underneath again. It was sort of an impromptu tube tent, and it kept the worst of the wind off me. There wasn't any rain, and I settled down. I'd eaten my picnic supper, and I settled down to try to sleep. Well, I had just started to doze off when very, very loud in the night, I heard an engine, like a truck engine. And then the headlights turned my cocoon into a sort of light tube. And every story I had ever read or seen about bad things happening to women alone in the woods went through my head all at once. And I'm huddling there just freaking out. The engine stops. Can't be more than 10 feet away from me. The headlights are still blaring. And I hear giggles. Well, that was kind of reassuring. I mean, most axe murderers don't giggle before they come, or maybe they do. I don't know. The things got quiet. They shut the headlights off. I knew they were still there, and I was still very frightened. So I snuck out of the opposite end of the tube from the end that the truck was at, and keeping a very low profile, I made my way to the outhouse. I had left my walking stick there with my food bag kind of propped up at the top of it to keep it safe from critters. And I braced the walking stick against the door. And I was prepared to defend my life if someone decided to break in and murder me. And I huddled in there for a long time. And then I heard the truck start up again and the headlights came back on. I could see it through the little mesh window. And the truck went away. And I crawled out of the outhouse back into my little tube tent and went back to sleep. And it was only the next morning that it occurred to me what that tube of plastic must have looked like to the people in the truck, who were probably teenagers who'd come to canoodle or get high or both. What that lit up tube in the middle of the woods at night must have looked like to them. They might have been, for a few minutes, as scared as I was before they decided to giggle. So that's my story, my first solo hike.
Good job. Thank you. Yeah, yeah. So, do you want to say what you thought they thought it looked like?
What's that?
Do you have an idea what they thought it looked like?
Well, I mean, the first thing you'd think of was something like from outer space. I mean, there's this shimmering plastic tube lit up.
I don't, it's funny because when you talk about them with the lights on and the engine running, and then the engine stops, but the lights stay on
For a moment.
Yeah, well, I think that would have kind of freaked me out too. It's like they need good light to do whatever they're going to do. That's just. Thank you so much, Allison. Thanks for sharing that story, and it's great having you back here again for the second month in a row, starting a new streak. So we're going to do a little bit of a halftime thing, and then we've got a story from Doug Avery. Doug, you're going to be okay. Are you okay? I think you're going to be bringing us home tonight. But we're going to do one thing before we do that. I'm going to ask some questions. And so, Doug, when you answer, you don't know, I've told everybody else the questions, but.
You're going to take the spotlight off me, Steve.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Thank you for reminding me. It looks perfectly normal to me.
Thank you.
Let's get to gallery view. And there we go. So, Doug, and I didn't see if you nodded your head. Are you okay if I'm gonna have you tell a story here in a little bit?
Yeah.
We're gonna do this other thing first, and you were the one, you haven't heard the questions. I kind of prepped everybody else, so you can let everybody else go first. I have answers to these. Ian, if you want to join us and answer any of these questions, that would be great too. Because
watch the feet, please.
Yeah.
So the theme tonight, and by the way, I should announce first of all, the theme next month is on April 1st, and the theme is Blame It on the Rain. Now, I didn't realize how perfect that was until I looked at April 1st and thought, oh, that's April Fool's Day. That's a natural for practical jokes or something like that. Then you recall who sang the song "Blame It on the Rain."
Yep.
And
Rain don't mind.
Perfect for April 1st. So you can look that up. "Blame It on the Rain," and you can see the whole story about that song and the performers that did it. It's actually sad the way it ends, but for a while it was just. I guess it was funny. I don't know. I didn't know this. I was old enough. I didn't know this. In other words, music had passed me by, I guess, by that point. But it won a Grammy. The song "Blame It on the Rain" won a Grammy. The performers did. Here's a little hint. The performers won a Grammy. Okay, so I am asking the question: have you ever been fired, and did you deserve it? And does anybody here want to tell a story about getting fired and deserving it or not deserving it? If nobody does, if nobody wants to raise their hand, you're going to hear what I had kind of prepared for the evening for my story. Doug's got one. All right, Doug, let's hear about it.
So getting fired and probably deserved it. This is actually okay. So it's kind of double-edged. So I got fired and deserved it because I walked out and quit. If that makes any sense. So. I was 17 years old, probably at the time, very naive in the workforce. Working at I was working at a fast food restaurant, and I didn't like the manager much. She really didn't have anything nice to say for me, and I tried to peg through it. And being as young as I was, I got so fed up that I decided that I was not going to take it anymore, and I promptly loaded up the grill with as many burgers as I could find from the box, and then I didn't tell anybody they were there, and then I left. So I got a very angry call from the manager the following morning, saying that I was let go. I thought it was pretty obvious that I wasn't coming back anyway. But yes, looking back, I definitely deserve to have been let go for how I walked out.
So I want to. I had a situation similar to that where I just showed up late, but they had and I didn't call them and tell them, and I was almost done with the job anyway, and so I had something similar to that. But I actually went up and ended up going back to work, and they let me work. Robin Haber Carson wrote, "Allison, now all I can think of is the word canoodle." So thank you for that. Thank you for thank you for letting us hear that word again. There is a clip, there's a YouTube video clip out there somewhere of anchors making bonehead statements, and this male anchor says to the woman anchor, we can canoodle on that later, and she says, "Oh no, we will not be canoodling on that." He didn't know what canoodle meant. I think he thought that meant like, we'll talk about this later or something like that. Anyway, a canoodle does not mean we will talk about something. For those of you scoring at home, for the you young kids, don't use the word canoodle unless you know what it means. Ask your mom. He
probably meant like noodle. Like, think about it. Like, he probably thought it just was a fancy way to say like to use your noodle.
Yep. Oh,
that's not what that means. It's a whole different noodle situation.
No, and not even in a different context does it mean that. So
no.
There are no that I'm aware of. There are no secondary meanings. That is that meaning. Yeah, interesting word anyway. Anybody else have a story about getting fired? Did you get fired?
So I was never fired. Because I am an awesome employee. However, my first year teaching in Philadelphia, they did a huge round of layoffs because of budgetary concerns, and they didn't want to pay for our healthcare coverage over the summer. So they decided to lay off like the newest 2,000 teachers that they had hired. It's like, last in, first out. So my first year teaching in Philly, I got a pink slip on my birthday.
Wow.
Yeah, it was awesome. My principal called me into the office, and I was like, oh, she must be wanting to give me a birthday card. Nope, it was a pink slip.
So you had no inclination that was going to happen?
No.
Oh, wow. Well, that's a birthday you won't forget.
Yeah, I mean, they hired us all back at the end of the summer, which is what she told me. She's like, oh, don't worry. This is just to not have to pay for your health care.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah, okay, great. Thanks.
So anybody else have something? Yeah, so I've been fired twice. Both times deserved it. And actually both times technically I didn't get fired. I was given the opportunity to, well, one time they laid me off, and the second time they gave me the opportunity to resign. There was more money in resigning, so I took that. And how that one happened was I came back from vacation completely clueless that this was going to happen that day. But I came back from a week's vacation and I was working the first day. And I don't know, in almost any job, even the jobs you love, sometimes it's tough to get back in the groove on the first day. And I was struggling through the first day. And around 4 o'clock, 4:30, about a half hour before quitting time, they called me into the conference room and they said, "You have the choice of resigning or being fired." And the reason was because I had made some long distance phone calls on the company dime. And the reason they knew it is because I had told the company accountant, I made some long distance phone call that I need to pay for. Now, there is a little more context to that. We had had a conversation about this before, so I was in the wrong. I deserved to be fired. I could say that my honesty got me fired. There was some other context around there too, and I was angry at the time because no matter whether you know you deserve it or not, you may have the temptation to take it personally. And I did take it personally, and I felt like I was being singled out. I felt like I'd done a good job there. It wasn't a perfect fit. And this is part of a story, by the way, that I have told in a different context. I think when the theme was stuck, this was the firing that was related to that. But I was angry when they told me because I felt like I had done the right thing and I didn't really feel like I had broken an agreement per se because I was making good on it or something like that. I don't know what the logic was going on in my head at the time, but they had this was hard for them. Now the accusation I made against them was, "You're doing this because you're hurting for money." And it was true. The company was hurting for money at the time. And there were other employees there that I think if it had done the same thing, there's no way they would have fired them, even under the same circumstances. But they had kind of figured out a way to do my job without me. And one way was to assign some tasks to other people. That's the natural one. But that was about the time they discovered the unpaid internship. And so they started offering these internships to people. Now, I will say later on, they got in trouble for this because these unpaid interns didn't like being unpaid. And this was about the time, and I had done 2 unpaid internships when I was in college. No, actually, one of them was paid a little bit. And so I thought that was the norm, but this was not being the norm anymore. And it's really kind of not the norm at all anymore. But at the time, it was falling out of favor. But they were loving it because they could get this work done through these interns. Part of my job that didn't require a lot of education, that was basically following up on tasks that needed to be done. So I pointed that out to them. I said, "You're doing this because this company is in a financial situation. Other people here could have done the same thing," and they denied it. "Oh, no, that's not the case. This is all about, we inspire to have a workplace of integrity, blah, blah, blah." And what I realized is I wasn't going to change their mind. And I had this moment. I was looking at their faces and they were so pained. They liked me. They didn't want to fire me. I knew they did see a cost savings there, and I gave them an easy way for them to let me go. So I looked at their faces and I felt bad for them. I felt bad for them in this moment. And I said, "Look, after all I let the anger go, and I said, I'm going to be fine. You guys, you don't need to feel as bad about this as you're feeling right now. I understand this is hard, but and they were just blown away. It's one of it, there are moments in our lives when we do good things. And this is one of the best moments of my life where I absolve these people of, "Look, I'm going to be okay. And you probably geared up to have a very painful experience in that. And it was painful for a bit, but I'm going to be fine. I'm going to figure this out." And the truth was, I had committed to 2 years to this company, and we were 1 year into that agreement. And I had come back from vacation, not as eager to go back to this job. I didn't love this job. The company was kind of cool, but I didn't love this job. And I was committed because I had committed to 2 years and they'd committed 2 years to me that I was going to work that next year. And at the end of 2 years, really take a good look at what I wanted to do. The great thing was, and this is where the ending merges with the other one. Within a few months, I had a job that I considered a dream job, and I met the woman I would marry. So, and that was actually related to that job, because that job was somewhere where this woman was not, where Diana was not. So it ended up working out fine. So yes, I've been fired. I deserved it. And it was awesome. It was a good experience. So that was going to be my story tonight, but thankfully I could just answer it this way and I didn't have to organize it. The second question, do you remember a story about someone else being fired? Does anybody want to tell on somebody else without, and you probably don't want to name names. If you don't have one, I have one that's just real quick, but okay. Allison, do you have one?
Unmute here. Well, a friend of mine worked in restaurants. She was really good at it. She worked in like bowling alley junk food kitchens, or high-end cafes. She was good, but she had the boss from hell. This woman who owned a cafe in Seattle. It was her baby, and she had a whole lot of attitude and a whole lot of anxiety, and she was famous, I think, all over the city for being the worst possible employer. She would berate her staff in front of customers, and she was never fair. She was just constantly throwing temper tantrums. And one day, Nancy had had enough. She'd prepared some drink for the customer, and boss came up to her and started yelling at her about something completely irrelevant. And this was all in full view of all the customers in this crowded little cafe. And Nancy just threw the drink in the woman's face, set the glass down, turned around and walked out. And as she walked all the way to the door, which was a long way, crowded with cafe tables, people stuffed wads of money into her apron and applauded.
Can you say where that was?
What?
Can you say where that was?
No.
No.
No, I can't say where that was. It's not in the same place anyway.
Can I say what it was?
Was it Cloverleaf Sport? No.
This was in Seattle,
Okay.
and it was back in the 80s, probably 90s. No, 80s.
There's a really slim chance any of us would know this person, and you won't know the person that I'm going to tell you about. But anybody else have one?
Oh, I got one. So
Yeah.
this is also about teaching in Philly. The teacher that I was hired to replace at my school got fired the year before, partway through the year, for selling marijuana to the students.
Oh, yeah.
And so he got fired, and there was like 2 months left in the school year, but they didn't hire anybody to replace him. And then I was hired the next fall. And so when I went in for like before the school year started, there was the room and it was a lab. I was teaching engineering, and they were like, no one's been in here since he was fired. We don't know what you're going to find, but you have to clean out this room. And so I had to go through all the cupboards and all the lab tables and all the everything. And I just kept thinking, like, I'm going to find a giant stash. Like, I'm going to find giant bags of weed, maybe giant bags of cash. But the only thing I ended up finding was a whole bunch of ungraded final exams and projects and all of, not just from that year, but from years before. And like I went in and like he gave them all grades, but they were total fiction. But sadly, I found no drugs and no cash.
Aww.
Did the students next year expect you to keep the business going?
No, they, I think they did expect me to give them grades that were total fiction, but that expectation was not met either.
Oh, that's wild. Anyone else?
Yeah, I got one, Steve. We're all telling one. So this is back when I was in high school. We're talking like 25 years ago now, I guess. I was a sophomore and I was in a creative writing class. And in the middle of the year, we got a brand new creative writing teacher. And I mean, we all personally thought she was really great. I mean, she's really down to earth. Like, I learned a lot from her. Like, I mean, and it was the first time I'd ever been introduced to the Vorpal Bunny. So, like, I was having a genuinely good time. And then we all came to class one day and she was just gone. and we had a substitute, and the substitute remained for the rest of the year. We couldn't figure out what happened to her, and there were rumors galore, like, she was fired because she inappropriate things with other students. She was, fired because she, was smoking marijuana, which, like Kim said at the time, was really, really frowned down upon. You can't do that kind of thing. And there was so many rumors as to why she was let go. And then in the final day of the year, the biggest rumor came about, and we were told that she was let go for plagiarizing all of our stories for her own short story book.
Whoa.
Wow.
Did you ever get proof? Did you
Never. I was really young. I was really young at the time, so never any proof. But like, that was the biggest thing. Like, a student walked in and was like, "Did you hear? All of our stories are somewhere else under Mrs. name."
Wow.
So.
Wow.
Well, there's.
And she found a publisher?
Kind of a compliment.
I doubt, I doubt that book made up for the lost salary. So, wow. Well, props to you guys. You must have written well. So, that they're gonna get these in a book. Wow, that's interesting. So my one story, did anybody else have one? I won't take forever on this, I promise. It is my way of doing things to take forever. But at one point in my work experience, I had the opportunity to be a supervisor. It's not something I ever want to do again. But it wasn't that this experience was bad, but it was. I just have learned that I'm a worker bee. That's good for me. So in this experience, I had one person working for me. And I'm being as vague as possible because under any circumstance, I would not want this to get back to this person. But this person totally kissed my behind because I was the supervisor. Now, I didn't see it that way. I saw it as a person very conscientious about the job that they were doing, wanting to make sure that I was happy with the work, thinking that I had a knowledge of the craft enough that my expertise was valued. And so the questions that were being asked were in response to that respect for me that this person had. Years later, different corporation, I'm not a supervisor. This person becomes a supervisor at that company, not over me, but I started hearing these things about how awful this person was to the people below, just rude. You talked about, one of you talked about, Allison, you talked about, berating somebody in front of other people, doing that all of the time. And I'm like, this cannot be the same person. That this was somebody who I thought this person was just nice, just instinctively nice. And no, what this person was instinctively a kiss up, kick down person. And it was a great experience of realizing how people in different contexts will not behave the same. Who you see them in one context may not be who they are in another. So if you see me on the street and I'm a grump after seeing me being so nice here on Story Night, don't be surprised. This is great because it gives me an excuse. All right, I do have one other question, and then we'll get to Doug's story. Besides the story tonight, the theme tonight is take a hike. So we've talked about getting fired, that kind of taking a hike. We're not going to address getting kicked out of relationships. That comes up all the time anyway. But does anybody have a memorable walk other than the story that they may have told tonight? Anybody have a memorable walk that they want to talk about? I don't know how great this question is, but because even when I think about the walk that I will talk about, it's not fantastic, but I'll just tell my quick little story. And I wrote about this on fieldofsteve.substack.com, my newsletter that you can subscribe to. It's free. There'll be a new newsletter tomorrow. I'm okay promoting myself here. There was just a time my brother had a car. It was a Capri, and I think it was made by Mercury. And the Mercury Capri I don't think it was a great car new, and he didn't have it new. And there's a lot of backstory about how he drove it to this place. And one night I had to drive it. I had to drive it from my parents' house, which was in Midway, Utah. Midway is in what's called the Heber Valley. And the Heber Valley is this quiet little valley. If you're taking the long way between the big city of Salt Lake City and the less big city of Provo, if you take the long way around, you'll go through the Heber Valley. But Heber Valley maybe had 5,000 people and Midway had 1,000, and they were about 5 miles from each other. And you drive down a kind of deserted road that I had driven a million times. And there are houses interspersed here and there. There's farmland there. And then you get to a main highway that takes you up a pretty steep road by a lake. And then you get on the freeway that'll take you to Salt Lake City. Well, I'm going up to this highway and the car stops working. It either broke down or I ran out of gas. I was as unreliable as the car, so it's possible that I didn't fill it up before I left. Whatever it was, I was 10 miles from my parents' house and 35 miles from my own house. So I decided to walk back to my parents' house for the night. And it was the deep of night. It was probably midnight when I started the walk. And along the main road, it was fine. But then I turned off this road that I had driven a million times before. It was an uneventful little drive, a few turns here and there. But this was it was a cloudy night. It was dark. There was no moon out. And this is in the middle of nowhere. Nowhere seems metropolis compared to where I felt like that night. And it is so weird. We talked about, I mentioned how when you see somebody in a different context, how different they are. This place, this pastoral, lovely, bucolic place was the place of haunted mansion like stuff. It was scary. You would hear noises. I would hear noises, and which is normal. There are critters out there. Not knowing if it's a cougar or a skunk or just something harmless is kind of unnerving as you make that walk. I kept a pretty good pace that night, except that I couldn't really see that well in front of me. I made it back just fine. But it was a really interesting night to take that walk over a place that I knew very well, and to actually see it in a different light was incredible. So that's all I have. That's the only memorable. Well, there have been other memorable walks, I'm sure, but nothing I want to bring up. Anybody else have anything about a walk that you went on? Yes, Priya.
I can share one.
Yes.
This jogged a memory that I forgot that I had. So I lived in Boston for a few years before going abroad for a bit and then coming here. And when I moved to Boston, I had some people who I knew from high school and was really trying to find connections of just like knowing a person in a place. So I joined this musical ensemble of people who were friends of friends, and it actually ended up being like a really wonderful part of my life, but it was quite a ways away. So it was about a 50-minute to an hour train ride. And when I got to Boston, I was like, oh, heck yeah, like I'm going to get to know the city. It's going to be great. I live 2 blocks from the closest train station on the Orange Line, and this is just off the Red Line. So I would go across Boston into Cambridge into Somerville, easy. So I started going maybe like 2 weeks, 3 weeks after I moved to Boston. And I thought, I'm going to memorize this train map. I'm going to get it down. And by the time I moved out, I had it down like pat. But this was 2 weeks in. So I went to the first practice for this musical ensemble, loved it. And then as we're headed home, I realized like, oh, the trains are going to shut down soon. Ooh, I did not time this very well. And someone in my group, thankfully, was like, oh, I'll give you a ride. I live not too far off. So they gave me a ride to my neighborhood, which was Jamaica Plain, but did not give me a ride to my station. They gave me a ride to my train station 2 stops down. And they're like, oh, it's the Orange Line. Just hop on the train, up 10 minutes, 2 stops, you'll be fine. And I had just gotten there, like my phone was almost dead. And stupid, like 22-year-old Priya was like, oh, I'll just walk it. It's fine. It's maybe like, it should be 10-minute walk. Perfect. But this was like 11 p.m. on like a weeknight. And this was 2 stops down in what I found out later was the opposite direction of where I wanted to go. So I got out of the car at the station. I was like, okay, bye. Thank you. My friend drives off and I'm like, okay, 10 minutes walk that direction. And so I walk in that direction and it is actually the opposite direction. So I walked for about 25 minutes before I realized like there are no people. the train is gone. Where's the next stop? I should be finding another train stop around here. My phone is dead. Also, like, I don't even know what neighborhood I'm in. And stupid me who thinks like, oh, my internal compass is flawless, was like, this is the absolute worst situation. So it was the only time in my life I've ever stopped on a sidewalk, looked around and been like, all right, we're going back, and turned back and walked in the same exact direction for about 25 minutes till I hit that same train stop where he dropped me off. And I was like, okay, we're in the right direction. So 15 minutes more in that direction, and I found my train stop. And from there, it was like a 5-minute walk home. So as soon as I got home, I charged my phone. I had my keys in between my fingers the entire time because I'm like, young, unaffiliated woman in a new neighborhood. Thankfully, there was no shady business. But after that, I downloaded a copy of the train map to my phone and printed it out and stuck it in my wallet as well. And then always carried around about $2.70 in cash and change just in case I needed a train fare for the night. And by the time I moved out of Boston about 3 years later, I could do the trains with my eyes closed. I could walk the distance between them in like 5 minutes less than regular people could. But that was pretty terrifying. I've learned a lot since then.
Yeah, I'm so glad you knew your way back, or you were right about your way back. My gosh,
it was a straight line. I just happened to be going in the opposite direction of the straight line. So always study the map before you start walking.
Important safety tip, everyone watching this. All right. Anyone else have a walk story?
I got one, okay. Steve. So it's a short walk actually, but my first daughter had a heart transplant when she was 6 months old. And I remember being super nervous, super scared, super worried about the whole thing. Now my favorite children's book when I was a kid was Alexander and the Terrible, Horrible, No Good, Very Bad Day. And I remember I was at this hospital where because she was finally getting her heart transplant, and we were at the hospital, and they, we got to go with her as far as, a certain set of doors, and then we couldn't go with her anymore. So they took her back, and I was a nervous wreck. And I remember pacing back and forth, and I found this hall, and it was this long stretch of hall. I was like, okay, this is a good spot for me to walk back and forth. And I glanced over, and they had murals on the entire length of the wall, Alexander and the Terrible, Horrible, No Good, Very Bad Day. So I took the walk of the hall reading the book, and it just kind of instantly calmed me down while I was nervously waiting for her to get out of surgery. So short but very long walk.
Wow. Well, thanks for sharing that. You've told the story of this on stage with us before, and I'm sorry. It suddenly dawned on me that I need to pay attention to something that's on here, but I'm not going to let it distract me now. Okay, let's go back to being distracted elsewhere. I just at the end, I guess at the end of tonight, when I stop the meeting, that's going to stop the stream. I think that's going to how that's going to be end up working. So that's fine. All right. So anybody else? Yes, Allison.
Oh, well, it's a story really a lot like Priya's. I went to college in New York, to Barnard, and I started to learn the subway system. I was going downtown to cultural events, sometimes respectable ones like poetry readings, and sometimes a little weirder than that. But I hadn't really nailed the subway system yet. So one evening, it wasn't super late, it was 10 o'clock, but it was full dark. I got out of the train at 110th Street, came up out of the subway and noticed it was not Broadway after all. And I'm standing there looking around, this elderly Black man in one of those newsstands that never close right by the subway entrance. He looked at me and he said, honey, you go right back down those stairs. You go back to Columbus Circle, and you get the A train. Thank you. No, you're not walking around Morningside Heights.
Wow.
Oh.
Yeah, I have I've heard stories. I guess I remember one of my brother-in-law was, they were actually driving in a neighborhood, and somebody came up to him and said, you don't want to be driving around here. And it's so nice when people do this. It's, oh my, wow. Robin Carson says, Priya, you knew about the safety key thing.
You kind of have to, especially in a new environment. Like I was living in a house with several roommates, but they were all guys. So I feel like they didn't really have to think about that. But just in case, your best weapon is usually closest if you need it, and it's probably your keys.
Well, so that's great. Somehow that was, oh, I think somebody else was, somebody just else had the sound on. Okay. All right. Anybody else have a walking story? All right. We're going to
Well,
go.
I'll just
Go ahead.
say one sentence about a memorable walk of my life. And that was when I walked across the graduation stage at college. It was a place where I had kind of like envisioned for a very long time, but didn't know if I would get there. And when I did, it was spectacular.
Was it unexpectedly spectacular?
Yeah, like it was even more awesome. Like people were like, when people say like, oh, you know, don't expect too much, you'll be let down. I'm like, shit, no, that was amazing.
It's one of those cases where they lowered your expectations and you're like, no, that's freaking awesome. This
Yeah,
is
no,
cool.
it was spectacular.
Yeah. Yeah. I actually had kind of that. No, I wouldn't say spectacular, but I was, when I walked at high school graduation, I didn't have any trouble getting through high school, but I was so relieved it was over. And I didn't expect that because high school had been a lot of fun and everything, but it was, I remember walking away just going, oh, this is so awesome. This is great. This is great. And we used the word awesome back then. So I probably did say awesome. All right, Doug, are you ready to tell the story you came here to tell us?
Yeah.
All right, the stage is yours. I'm going to put the spotlight on you.
All right.
And as soon as, there we go.
There it is. There it is. All right. So this so when I first moved out to Washington, I've only been out here about 8.5 years or so. When I first moved out to Washington, my uncle took the liberty to show me around Washington. I mean, we went to it was like a guidebook basically. He was just living it, taking me from place to place. But they were all easy places at first. Like I didn't really think anything of it. In Connecticut, where I'm from, there's not a lot of, I mean, there's hiking, but I mean, sometimes you kind of have to go out of your way to get to it. And, you know, I wasn't a big hiker back then anyway. So, but the things he showed me when I first was down here were really easy. And I could dress appropriately. Like we would go to Snoqualmie Falls, but we wouldn't hike the trails. We would just go stand and look at the waterfall. He'd be like, hey, look at this waterfall. And I'm like, cool. And then he'd take me to the Twin Peaks Diner and we'd have, you know, a good meal, you know, nothing like really like difficult to do. Nothing that requires me to dress specially either. So, so imagine things like that. I mean, he even took me to the Ram one day. Like these are the types of trips I was used to taking with my uncle. And then he tells me one day, he goes, hey, I'm gonna show you some more spots in Washington. And I'm like, cool, that sounds great. And I'm thinking it's the same kind of thing. You know, I'm thinking I can, you know, dress easily and not have to worry about anything. And we get in this truck and we start driving out and we pull off. My memory kind of escapes me, but I'm pretty sure it was Mount Rainier and it was the first time I'd been there. And he goes, all right, he goes, we're gonna go for a hike. And I kind of look at him laughing because I am in baggy jeans that I'm stepping on in my white shoes. I've got a collared, like heavy fabric shirt on. Like I am not dressed for hiking at all. But my uncle, sure enough, we were going hiking. And I was expecting it to be like, I mean, the hikes that had been on in Connecticut were, you know, easy, flat trails for the most part. And, you know, that's kind of what I'm preparing for. But No, in this instance, we are hiking, and we are hiking through the woods, and he's taking me to like these trees that are falling down in the forest that you kind of have to go off of the already kind of beaten path to another less beaten path to get to. And I've got, I mean, my socks are just, I can feel the dampness in my socks from the weather. I can feel the shirt that already weighs 2 pounds now weighs like 5 pounds on me. My white shoes are no longer white at all. And I remember like thinking, oh my God, this is what hiking is. I never want to do this again. But so overall that first trip was nice. I mean, I got to see a lot of good sights. He did bring me to some really cool like picturesque scenes, and that's was kind of the saving grace of it. But I'd even like dropped my wallet on this hike. Like I was just not having it at all. And then a couple of weeks later, he gave me advance notice that we were going to be going on a hike this time. So I was able to dress appropriately for the hike, and he took me out to another one of his favorite trails. And I remember that hike being a lot easier. I mean, it still wasn't ideal for me. I'm still not into hiking at all. But it was easier, and I could appreciate it more, and I could enjoy it a little bit more. And so I kind of found an appreciation for it. But it really wasn't until a couple of years ago where now I've kind of been on these moderate, easy hikes with my uncle sometimes. Nothing real fancy. We've driven up to Hurricane Ridge and walked like the easy trails, and that's actually one of my favorite hikes. I love the panoramic off of Hurricane Ridge. It's one of my favorite views in the world. But it wasn't until a couple of years ago when I went to Mount Rainier with my family, my kids, for the first time, just us. We rented a cabin up there. It was a really nice vacation, and I took my kids out on a hike. I'm still kind of coming around to whether or not I like hikes or not. They're not my favorite thing in the world, but I don't hate them at this point in time. But we did take a nice trail off of Mount Rainier, and I remember coming off of this ridge and coming up on the mountains, and I remember my son like literally gasping at what he saw. My daughter, whose face was buried in her phone 90% of the hike, happened to also look up and take in the same view that my son had taken in, and had put her phone away for a moment. And it wasn't until that moment right there that I fully appreciated what these kinds of things can do for people. I wouldn't say that I'm still a big fan of hiking, but I would say that I like the togetherness that it brings when you are with people you care about who see nature for what it really is.
Thank you, Doug. Other people are clapping here too. I got to put this on gallery view again. Yeah, you're from New England. You're thinking Walden Pond, Thoreau, yeah. Walk in the woods, these contemplative little walks. No, that's not what it is here. It's an endurance test around here, and I lived for several years in Utah too. So there are a lot of hills there too. I remember one time walking up, there was a ski lodge that had a nice trail that went from the lodge to the tramway up top, and it was like a 3.5 hour walk up and about a 2 hour walk back. But you're walking back, and it's just like, your body's just kind of bouncing down, and your knees hurt at the end of it. It was the walk down that was harder than the walk up. Thank you, Doug, for sharing your story, and thanks to all of you. As I mentioned before, it was a year ago tomorrow that we had our last in-person story night at the Cloverleaf. With some of the latest news that we've heard, I am hopeful, optimistic that we can get back to the Cloverleaf again. I'm even thinking this year it'll happen. I had my doubts when the year began, but I would love to go back there and see all of you again. I'm going to wait till it's safe, and at least everybody's had an opportunity to get the vaccine. And so I don't want to say I'm not in a hurry. I am, but I don't want to put anybody at risk. So that is my thing. We may be able to we've got a venue that has offered to let us do this outside. They have a sound system. and we can do it that way when we can gather again, which isn't now. And I don't really want to meet outside right now, as it turns out. So look for something this summer. But in the meantime, we will be back next month, the April 1st, which is April Fool's Day. We have, as I mentioned earlier, we have an appropriate theme, which is Blame It on the Rain. And it is an appropriate theme if you do the work, if you figure out why it's appropriate. And I gave you your hints earlier. The storynight.org will have this recording. I think, and those of you who are storytellers, if you want to hang out for a second afterwards when I end the stream, I think I can end the stream without ending whatever meeting in case you have anything you want to share with me. So that's a little sausage making here. By the way, we had a couple more comments. Manuel Ayala said, Jesus loves you. And Connie Quatermass said, Allison and Ian, cute doggy. So congratulations on that. Nice work on getting a cute dog. We have one here too. I'll show her off next time. And unless Diana's listening and hauls Ella up here. In the last year, I showed off another dog when we first started this, and we lost her. She had cancer, and it was time for her to, they say, cross that rainbow bridge. At any rate, so join us next month, April 1st. We'll be back both on Facebook and on YouTube, if that's your preference. If you want to tell a story, contact me. You can contact me here wherever you're watching this, and or you can go to storynight.org, and there's a comment form. You can leave a message there, and that'll go right to my email. Storytellers and my friends from the library, do you have anything else you want to add before we call it a night? Got people shaking their head no? Anybody else? Okay. So thank you all, and we look forward to